Hi everyone, it's Kelly here. Welcome to my channel if you have not been here before. Welcome back if you've been, and lovely to have you either way. So let's chat about the books that I have read in the month of May. So the first one is The Dressmakers of Yarrandarrah Prison by Meredith Jaffé. This book was a little bit underwhelming. I had high hopes for it because the premise was so interesting. So basically we've got a prisoner called Derek who is in jail at Yarrandarrah prison for a white-collar crime. He embezzled some money. And he discovers that his daughter is getting married. His daughter's about like 17 or 18 or something like that. So, and he hasn't seen her for the entirety of, like the last time he saw her was in court for his sentencing. So, and he's been in this prison for a couple of years now. Anyway, she's getting married. His ex-wife hasn't spoken to him either in that entire time. And the way that he finds out is the ex-wife's sister, who is a friend of his from before their marriage. And then it sort of transpires because he, in the prison, he's part of a sewing circle that's like a, productive activity for the men in the prison to do, that's run by volunteers. Anyway, he's quite a competent sewer, and he decides, or it's decided that they will make the dress for the wedding. I won't tell you more about the situation because I don't think it's worth going into it if you are going to read it, knowing more than that in terms of, sort of where the plot is heading. But as I said, it was a bit underwhelming because it sounded like a really interesting premise. Like, how did this happen? Like, how did he end up in jail in the first place? Like, how did he, how did he come to not be speaking to anyone from his family and so on? But there were some pretty major problems with the text that kind of stopped me from being as involved as I would have liked in their lives and sort of connecting with the characters. So, for example, I may or may not have spoken about this on this channel before. My husband likes to call it, someone has to hold the idiot ball. So basically the idea is there's a character who acts in a stupid way that's really out of character with what we've learnt about them as a person. And then after they've held the idiot ball, they pass it on, and it's just sort of like a device to kind of move the plot along. But it's jarring because it's out of character. So basically that happens in this book, and the person who holds the idiot ball is the volunteer who runs the sewing circle. And she does something completely out of character in that she lies at a critical moment and tells a fairly big lie of omission, and then also not of omission, like an actual just lie. So, and that really was jarring for me because you're just sort of reading it going, why are you saying that? Like, that's obviously it's what moves the plot along, but it's just, it's sort of really out of character for this character. Other things that bothered me about this book is that it uses a trope that I really hate, which is sort of miscommunication / if they just had a conversation about it, it would be fine, but they just don't talk to one another about things. It really bothers me. I really do not like that trope at all, where characters just don't communicate, and that's what sort of is the problem and kind of makes the problem linger longer than it needs to. So that bothered me quite a lot. And then there are other stupid things that happen as well. And then there was just this section of the book where literally every character was wallowing in self-pity, and I just couldn't at that point. So, so it was really disappointing because it could have been a really good book. Otherwise, the characters were otherwise interesting and endearing. But yeah, it was tricky. It was tricky to read because it just had these sort of glaring problems that kind of kept coming up. So I didn't hate the book, I ended up giving it 3 stars out of 5, which is fine, but not, I'm not going to read it again. Let's just put it that way. So that's the Dressmakers of Yarrandarrah Prison. My next book was, I should say, because I was not enjoying that book very much, I actually didn't finish a book until the 19th of May, because I was stalling on that book. And I was sort of in a bit of a slump because I didn't feel drawn to go back to it. And then a book arrived in the mail that kind of got me out of my reading slump. I read it straight away. And that is the sequel, the second book in the Lightfall series, Shadow of the Bird. The first one was called The Girl and the Galgurian, which I read, I think, last year. And then this came out, so I had pre-ordered it. And as pre-orders, the thing I love about pre-ordering is that you then kind of forget about it after you've done the order, because you're like, well, it's not coming now, so I just put it out of my mind. And then it kind of like turns up like a surprise, which is always fun. So that's this one, Shadow of the Bird. Now, I ended up giving this 3.75. So again, it was not, how to describe. Let me tell you about the plot first of all. So the first thing is this picks up directly from where we ended in the first book in this series, and the adventure continues. So our main characters are Bee, and this is Cat, and then we've got the cat Nim, who is not a speaking character. These two are speaking characters. The cat is not, but provides the sort of comedic relief, and I love this cat. This cat is amazing. One thing I will say that was great about this book is that I felt like the character development for Bee from the first book was really, really good. And, it sort of seemed like, so one of the sort of key aspects of her character and by extension, the plot, is that she has anxiety that causes her to kind of freeze. And as this is a graphic novel, when she freezes, it like sort of visually shows her freezing and things kind of continuing on around her. So I felt like there was some good development on her anxiety as a plot point in this book. So this, the bird that they're referring to is sort of like, I guess, has been the kind of evil character. I'll see if I can quickly find... so right at the beginning here. So basically the idea is that this guy here, the bird, is trying to steal the light from this universe, this world, that was established in the last book. The sun has already disappeared. And so they just sort of have these like city centers where there is a light, and he is trying to steal all the lights. So basically, excuse me, my throat's getting a little bit funny. Basically, he is trying to steal the light. They're trying to stop him from stealing the lights. So that's kind of like the main kind of plot of what's going on and the adventure. But what happens is right at the beginning of this book, she kind of ends up inside the mind of this character. And what she sees there gives her pause. So she somehow connects mentally, sees some stuff, and then is like, I'm not sure that this guy is just straight up evil. And that's kind of like the kind of the dilemma that she's going through in this book. So that was really, really interesting. I will say the thing that kind of that I find difficult about these books, I really like them a lot. But the reason that I haven't given this one 5 stars or the previous one 5 stars is because there are sections in this book that I sometimes, in these books, that I find a little hard to follow, especially when there's not a lot of dialogue. The illustrations, while amazing and beautiful, sometimes don't give enough of the context of what's going on. And so you're kind of like looking at those pages going, okay. And it's not till later that you kind of realize what's been going on. So that was the only reason that I docked a 1.25 off the star rating. So yeah, but otherwise this is a really, really great series, and I'm definitely going to keep it, definitely going to reread it, especially once it concludes, because we are definitely not concluded by the end of this one. So I'm assuming that there are more to come. So that's Lightfall, Shadow of the Bird. The next one that I read on audiobook, and it was The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. Now with this book, I had my doubts at the beginning. So the thing that kind of gave me pause, there were two things that happened right near the beginning of the book. Number one, one of the main characters so we've got basically a couple and their daughter, and then we've also got a fig tree who is sometimes the narrator. So we've got, we're kind of alternating perspectives with what's going on here. So we're finding out what's happening in the present. We're also learning what happened in the past. Sometimes it's a human narrator. Sometimes it is the fig tree that is the narrator. So at the very beginning of the book, the teenage daughter of this couple does something at school that she feels like she can't come back from, like she can't save face from. And just the lead up to them telling us what happened, I just felt was a bit, was quite drawn out and unnecessarily drawn out to find out what it was that she'd done. It just takes far too long for them to get to the point. Secondly, from the fig tree's point of view, right near the beginning of the book, the fig tree says that she's in love with the husband of this couple. And when I heard that, I was just like, what? And so it just kind of, it took me a little bit to get into this book because those two things happened right near the beginning. After that happened though, it did get better. Like the plot kind of started moving along, and you started to get to know the characters a bit better, and that was better. However, there was just also some stuff that kind of happened throughout. So sort of like the middle section was good. As we were sort of getting into maybe the final third of the book, there started to be some things in there that just kind of were like, stupid's the wrong word. It's probably a bit harsh. Were just a bit jarring, I guess. So the first that I'll say is that sometimes there were metaphors that were laboured, and also just a bit much. And for example, there's a time where the father is explaining to the daughter that different people view trees differently, and the entirety of that metaphor is to kind of like encourage her and be like, you're the good type of person. I don't know. It just sort of was quite a laboured metaphor. And the conversation seemed to just happen so that this metaphor could be given. And it just felt jarring. It didn't feel like it flowed as part of the book. And also there were characters in the book, such as the Aunt Miriam, who I just felt were really flat, like one-dimensional characters, that I would have just liked more to kind of see how they fit into the story some more, and like learn more about them as a character. But yeah, again, it was just like that character's there just to kind of service the plot and to kind of move things along, which bothered me a bit. And then also I would have liked some more resolution on the point of generational trauma, because it's brought up and then it just feels like it would, how to say, it felt unresolved to me at the end, even though it was addressed a little bit. Anyway, it was fine. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I really deliberated over that star rating because I really wasn't sure And I settled on 3 just because I thought, this book it was okay, but it was problematic. And I know I'm not going to read it again. I didn't enjoy it enough to read it again. So that's why I ended up giving it 3 stars rather than a higher rating. And also because of all of those problems that we talked about. So anyway, so far I've had a mixed kind of experience of my reading in May. Next book was a 5-star. So I loved this book. And if you follow me over on Instagram, and my link is below if you don't and you'd like to, I have already spoken a little bit about this book. And that is Probert by Evelyn Araluen. This is a poetry collection. It was the winner of the Stella Prize here in Australia, which is it's sort of like the equivalent of the Women's Prize, but Australia specific. So it's for women and non-binary writers. This year, it used to just be novels, but this year they extended it out to other forms as well, including poetry. So this was the first year that poetry was eligible, and poetry won, which is such an interesting outcome for the Stella Prize. Anyway, this collection, I haven't read the other books that were shortlisted for the Stella Prize, but I 100% agree that this was winning material. As I said, it was a 5-star read for me. To me, this was like a masterclass of how to root a poetry collection in place. This was very much a book about the Sydney, which is where I live, and sort of outer Sydney. I've lived in the suburbs of outer Sydney before, and it definitely, I was picking up on things because of the previous locations where I've lived in Sydney and places I've been. Excuse me. So yeah, it was really something I enjoyed reading from that point of view. This is primarily, I would say, a collection about colonialism and the impact. I didn't say before, Evelyn Araluen is an Aboriginal Australian, a First Nations author, poet, and so she's talking about the impacts of colonization and kind of like the far-reaching impacts, because, some time has passed, but the impacts are still being felt, not just by Aboriginal Australians, but also all Australians. I'm a white person. I'm definitely a beneficiary and a privileged person because of the color of my skin, and the fact that I am descended from, I'd say the colonizers are descended from the convicts that came across from England, but still, I'm still a white person. I'm still a privileged person, and so this collection to me was just it made me think. There were gut punch moments, where you're like, the insight from what you've just read really just resonates throughout your whole body. And then there were also moments that were just really powerful things that Evelyn Araluen is saying through her poetry. I know that I'm going to read this over and over again. It was such a good collection. And even, I think, for people who don't live in Sydney and so wouldn't pick up on those references, I still think you would get a lot out of it. And I would recommend picking it up if you are able to get your hands on a copy. So Probert by Evelyn Araluen. Chef's kiss, it was amazing. Okay, the last book that I read in the month of May. We're up to number 5 here, which in a month where I didn't start finishing anything until the 19th of the month, I'm pretty pleased that I was able to finish 5 books in that time. So the last one that I read was 100 Days by Alice Pung. Now, this is a book that has been nominated for the long list of the Miles Franklin Award, which is sort of the main award that the Stella Prize was kind of stemmed from. So the long list is out at the time of recording. In the month of June, we will be getting the short list, and then I believe we find out the winner in July. So I am attempting to read. I'm challenging myself to read all of the books from the long list in this time, before the end of the year at least. I'm going to try. So this was the first one. This was the one that I already had when the long list came out, and I was able to get started on it ASAP. So this is a book about a girl called Karuna who falls pregnant. She's only 16. Her parents, her mum is of Chinese descent, but moved to Australia from the Philippines, and her father is white Australian. And they have marital problems and end up getting divorced quite early on in the book. So basically, well, they've already gotten divorced at the point at which she gets pregnant, but we don't sort of find out more about that until kind of she tells us about it, because this entire book is narrated by her. It's also in the second person. So that was something, I think, one, that it's a teenage narrator, two, that it's in the second person, that kind of made it a little bit difficult, I felt, for me to connect with our main character, Karuna. So basically, this is her talking to her unborn baby. She's, talking about her life and the circumstances in which she finds herself. Her mother is sort of this very stereotypical Asian tiger mum, and she is very controlling of Karuna, and especially once she finds out she's pregnant, the control just kind of like amps up even more than it was before, which was already pretty high. So yeah, things are quite bleak for Karuna, and she's sort of like talking about her bleak life to the unborn baby sort of thing. And, I felt like I wanted to be more connected to her, but as I said, possibly the fact that she's a teenager, possibly the fact that it's written in the second person, when I say written in the second person, it's written to the baby. So maybe those were reasons why I found it harder to connect with Karuna. But to me, it just didn't quite get there in terms of that connection. This was not a bad book. I didn't dislike this book. It was a good book, but it was one of those things where I know I'm not going to read this again because I didn't connect with the character, and there were emotional, sad and joyful things that happened in this book, and I didn't cry. I didn't connect in the way that I normally would connect with a character. So I ended up giving this 3.75 stars. So it was okay. It was quite good. But like I said, there were connection issues. Maybe if I were a younger person or, a different kind of reader, I would connect. So I don't think this is a bad book. I still would probably recommend it to people, depending on who they were as a person and a reader. But not one that I would say, you must read. So that was my experience of book number 1 in that challenge. So with that, I am beginning to, so I've made myself a challenge over on the story graph, which anyone is welcome to. I'll put the link below in the description if you'd like to join and read the long list of the Miles Franklin Award for 2022. You're very, very welcome to join us. I've set it so that if anyone does join me, I've set it to like the beginning to last year. So just in case people have already read some of the books on the long list when they initially came out. And I've set the ending to December. So that's how we do. So you're very welcome to join, and I'd be very happy to have you over there and joining me on this challenge of trying to read the whole long list this year. So these are my books. This is my May, my 5 books of May. I'm really pleased with myself that I was able to sort of pull myself out of that slump caused by this book, and to get 5 books read. I'm recording this now sort of, I think it's about the 3rd of June, and I've already finished 1 book in the month of June, so hopefully June is going to be a more productive month. I'm also still stuck here at home, unwell. It's now my 3rd week of just being sick, and I'm so over it. I really just want to get back to normal and back to work and all of those things. So thoughts and prayers are welcomed at this point. I really, really want to be able to go back to work on Monday. So fingers crossed for me that I'll be able to do that. Anyway, meanwhile, now that my brain has defogged, I've got plenty of brain for reading now, and hopefully that means that I'll be able to read more books in June. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you on the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like more bookish content like this, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!